Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust consumes, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to True Wealth. I'm Dave Spasconi, and here in the studio with me is Maria Smith. Good morning, Maria. How are you today?
Good morning, Dave. I'm doing well. How about yourself? It's really hot here in Connecticut.
It is, yes. The long and short of it is summer heat and humidity are here. The flies are here, and we're going through a lot of fly spray. How's that for starting the show?
Yeah, and now with your horses, you must have those horrible, nasty horse flies, right?
Oh, those things are huge. I think they could actually carry off a cat. You know how a hawk can pick up bunnies and things. I think a horsefly could actually carry off my barn cat if he chose to. Yeah, they're huge. And the other thing is, what I learned, I didn't realize there were so many species of flies. I mean, they come in all shapes and sizes. And not only that, the worst part for me, at least in this area, seems to be the fall flies. These are these little black flies that just hang around until like the first frost. And you think when the weather gets a little cooler and a little nicer for us, these flies would go away, but they don't. These guys are small. They bite, and it's amazing. Matter of fact, some of the flies, you might find this interesting, won't follow the horse into the barn. They'll be on them outside. As soon as they walk into the barn, the flies, fly away, and then it's a little better, much better then for the horse. There's still a few in the barn of some other type, but that's the nature of some of the flies that we have here.
Yeah.
So sorry for that long-winded fly.
Oh, no, I was just thinking about, God's creation. Oh, my goodness. I mean, we think, there's so many kinds of animals, there's so much of nature, but there's just so many kinds of flies. It's just amazing how, it's like when we think of God, and no two snowflakes are alike, no two human beings are alike. I guess no two flies are actually alike, right?
I think so. I think you would have a hard case to make to say all the flies are alike based on the evidence. If we know no two snowflakes are alike, I don't know how we know that, but that seems to be
exactly. I don't know how we know that either, right?
Yeah, but let's say everybody seems to accept that as truth. I think you could make the case that no two flies are alike. We all kind of know that no two human beings are alike. I think that's pretty easy to figure out.
No two human beings are exactly alike. Exactly.
Yeah. And so I don't think I think we're all unique. I read something the other day, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but this may be interesting. It says we share each other's atoms. And the example given was worms, fish, fishermen. Think about this. We use worms as bait, which the fish eats. We bring the fish home, then we eat it. So essentially, we have the atoms of the worm in us. So we all share atoms of nature, of God's creation, one way or the other. Did you ever think of it in those terms?
Not quite in those terms, but I seem to recall going to school. They show the cycle of the grass and the cow and us, eating the beef and how we're all connected. So it's a similar thing.
Yeah. The atoms of the grass ended up being digested and become part of the cow, and we, have that steak, and so we've got the atoms of the grass in us, and it's the same thing worms, fish, fisherman, same process. But,
and actually, we're so blessed as Catholics that when we receive Holy Communion, we become part of God.
Yes, because that is not a symbol. It's not a representation. It's the actual, the real presence of Jesus Christ, and body, blood, soul, and divinity. And once again, it's amazing how the conversation leads from the simple to the divine sometimes.
Yep, from the natural to the supernatural, and that's exactly the progress, the process that God wants. We start, the natural world towards the supernatural. First comes the natural in everything, really. I mean, we feed our bodies. We eat food to feed our bodies, to grow, to nourish our bodies, and we feed our souls, the Eucharist, so that our souls will grow. We feed our souls prayer, the sacraments and prayer. Those are the two essential things that all people need to have, whether they know it or not. And of course, not that many people, not all people know that we need sacraments and prayer in order to fully grow, in order that not just our bodies are growing, or either growing older, as in bigger, from children to adulthood, or from adulthood to old age, where our bodies are growing older. Yeah, with spiritual food, with prayer, I think Saint Alphonsus de Liguori was the saint who said, if you pray, and I'm paraphrasing, if you pray, I can't remember the words now, just that how important prayer is. Without prayer, you just can't get to heaven. You can't without prayer. And the sacrament, the Holy Mass, is the greatest prayer, and the Eucharist is the greatest part of the Holy Mass. So all those go in together. Without prayer, without the sacraments, without prayer, we just can't get to heaven. He who prays, I think it's something, he who prays will get to heaven, and he who does not will not.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking of something I read about physical health. We all know that our bodies need nutrition and, rest, and so we're very tuned into physical health. But this author was making a point that we also need spiritual health, and using the means that you were talking about. Having physical health and not spiritual health will start to cause problems, so that your physical health, I think, in time is probably going to be emotional, or, depression or despair. I think that's how some people get there, is they're only connected to the physical part and not the spiritual part. You got to have that balance. And if both of those are taken care of, then we can live to our full potential, I think, not only health-wise, but what we were here for to begin with, what our role is.
That's exactly true, and I think it's nowhere more true as it is in our modern world, where so many put their faith in science. I think, really that would be the most prevalent modern religion, quote unquote, in quotes, scientism, because all throughout the history of mankind, there has been a belief for the vast majority of people, and sometimes it was nearly everybody. Maybe at times it was even everybody had some sense of the spiritual, the supernatural, because they could not break it down. They did not understand what was going on in the world. I mean, an eclipse would throw them all off. They were in terror. They thought the world was ending. Obviously, we don't do that now. We know when an eclipse is coming. You know what it is. We know it's going to be gone in a little while. But in olden times, I mean, everything was a supernatural thing. They didn't know what was going on, so they knew that there was something greater than them that they could not understand. But in our modern times, the illusion, the horrible illusion, it's a horrible illusion because it's so false. It's a false it just leads people down the absolute wrong way, is that now we're in charge of our lives. We're in charge of nature. We have control over nature. Even though we do to some extent, it's nothing. I mean, really. I mean, we know we can tell when a hurricane is coming, but does that stop it from being devastating? I mean, people don't lose their lives nearly as much. I mean, some still do, but nearly as much as they used to when hurricanes just came unexpectedly. But still, there's devastation. We can't stop it. We can, there's only so much we can do, and no matter how much further we go, there's still going to be only so much we can do, because at bottom line, God is in control of everything, and human beings are not. But we're under that illusion nowadays. We definitely are under the illusion that we don't need God and that we are far away from Him. Whereas before, everybody knew and everybody was aware of their spiritual side. Deep down inside, of course, everybody does know that we're not just material beings. Even the ones that are militant atheists, they know deep down inside. They've hide it. They have to deny it to themselves. They have to disregard any thoughts of, maybe there's more to life, and maybe there's more to the world. Maybe there's more. But at bottom line, everybody knows, because that's what it is to be a human being. To be a human being, we're made in the image and likeness of God, and we can try as hard as we want to deny it and to suppress it, but basically it's still there.
Yeah, boy, there was a lot of thoughts were going through my mind as you were talking. One is the way when you started off is a lot of not painkillers, but depression medications are out there, and science has gotten us to that point where if you're feeling down, pop a pill. Whereas at that point, maybe someone should ask a question. Why am I turning to science when maybe there's something else? But if that's what we do, if that's the, knee-jerk reaction to everything, then I think most people don't even think of going in another direction or considering other things. Whereas I think a religious person would, and maybe use, pills as the last resort. There are chemical imbalances. I think we've discovered that. And there is a difference between depression and despair. Depression, in my understanding of it, is that's more of a chemical imbalance. I don't know if that can be corrected with diet or whatever. I'm not a doctor, but despair is, no hope. And that's, I think, all spiritual. That's where someone starting to, why am I living in this void? What am I seeking, and what do I need to fill this void? And there's the hope, and that's the way you deal with despair, is to bring hope into your life. And I think science does mislead us if we're not always considering each side, okay, I get this, but what am I giving up? Or how did we do it before the science? And maybe there's a reason to bring the understanding of science into the picture, but not abandon the way we used to do things. I think early on, as you were saying, when we didn't have much science at all, this is probably back to the pagan days, everything was a god of some sort, and then Christ came along, and then Jesus gave us a whole new understanding of what the spiritual life is. So it's an interesting history, but I think we've kind of gone too far today with our understanding of what we control, what we think we have control over. Your example of the hurricane. Guess what? The only thing we know now is, rather than say 500 years ago, is it's coming, it's going to hit here, it's so get inside, or move to a different place, where they didn't know to do that back then. But it still is a hurricane. It still comes in and devastates things. So we really don't have any control. The only thing we have control over is what we do in preparation for it.
Exactly. Yeah. I wanted to address a couple of things you said. You said, why am I turning to science? That people can say, why am I turning to science when there is something else? Well, I think the biggest reason that people turn to science or distraction or hyperactivity or whatever they turn to, addiction or overworking, workaholic, whatever they turn to because the alternative, turning to God, means turning inward in a way.
Yeah.
And it means that if you turn inward and there's problems there, that you have to fix yourself. And who wants to fix themselves? Who wants to, first of all, acknowledge that there's so much wrong with them? And who wants to actually put in that effort? And, it's the effort which is very hard to change yourself. It's a lot easier to say, science will do it, or it's a lot easier to look at everything else that's going on wrong. Well, the politicians are wrong. Well, these people are wrong. Well, those people are wrong. Well, whatever. Anything other than looking at yourself and saying, well, this is a fault with me. This is something wrong with me. This is a sin with me. This is a failing with me. How can I fix it? How can I help it? So that's why I think people turn there. And the other thing you said was about, you said a lot of great things, but the other thing I wanted to comment on was that people didn't really focus so much on science in pagan days. I think it's really much more recent than that. I would tend to say the 1700s with the start of, rationalism, and you had, was it Francis Bacon, and those, during that time. Before that, there was still a lot of belief in God. I think you had it with the scientific message, which I can't remember exactly who did start it. It might have been Francis Bacon, but I can look these up. I've read about them just even recently, and I know them. But it's really around that time, the middle of about the 1700s. It could have been, had to do, I think, also with the French Revolution, and then. I do know, at least from watching the beautiful movie of the Song of Bernadette and from knowing about Saint Bernadette and Our Lady of Lourdes, which was in 1858, that you had people who did not believe at that time, who were really just above it all. They were intellectual. They were rationalists. They, believed in the material world and in science. So I think it's really a much more recent thing, a much more modern thing. And I think it started there with the elite and the academics, but it didn't really come down to the vast majority of people, I think, till maybe even the late 20th century, just recently in our time.
Well, that's when communication was far more efficient. The more information that can be spread, whether it's true or false, the more people, I think, get on board with something that sounds good. And one of the things, as you were saying, is that people don't want to turn inward. I think another thing that happens with people not wanting to look into this on the supernatural side is they see rules. They go, well, why should I give up my freedom to have to live this this life of being under the thumb of some church authority, the Pope in the case of the Catholics, and maybe some other authority in a Protestant church, but that's just going to kill my good times, when they're missing the point completely. It's when you are fully alive in your faith that you actually start to experience freedom. I know you've heard that many times. I've heard it from many people about they thought they were free, and then it dawned on them something happened that showed what a slave they were to the culture and how it was literally destroying them. And they did turn to God. Something happened. And it was only after they really got a true relationship with God and understanding what the church is all about that they realized they were free for the first time. So there's a lot of reasons, I think, why people go the route they do, I think a lot of times it is misinformation, or it's this not wanting to lose control of how they live their lives. When if you're feeling that way, you've already lost control. You just haven't gotten the memo yet, you know?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, what you said, as people do see, yes, most people, many people who are against religion see it as rules and see it as an infringement on their freedom. And why should I give up my freedom? That is absolutely true. And then what you also said, but and Jesus himself said in the Bible very, very clearly, the truth will set you free. And he is the truth. And the truth is, the closer we get to Jesus, the more we will know him and the more we will know ourselves. And that will be a freedom. And, there's a song from back when I was young that this line has come back to me in the last few years, which is, the song itself is not a religious song, but, if not all, I don't know, there's a bit of truth in just about everything. That's what makes it. That's why people are attracted to it. People are not attracted to something that's totally false, that has no truth. But anyway, this song, freedom is just another word. Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. And when do we have nothing left to lose? When do we have nothing left to lose? It's when we give everything to God. When everything we do is for God. When we don't care if we lose our home, our anything, whatever it is we have on earth, we have a holy detachment from it. It doesn't mean we don't take care of our home. It doesn't mean we don't go to work. It doesn't mean we don't care for our families. It means we do it, but with a holy detachment, that if God were to take it away from us, yes, at first, especially with serious things, we would grieve, but we would not despair, like you said. We would not go to despair.
Well, yeah, and the other thing is, if you have that understanding, that belief, then if something is taken away, it's because it was time for it to be taken away, and it will be replaced with what it is time for whatever is given to you. It's not just a one-way street where I lose everything and gain nothing. No, it's time for you to give this up because something else is planned for you, and there's several steps in getting to where you ultimately, at least during your time on this earth, are expected to do. And if you just stay in this one place, you're never going to get to the place where you really need to be. It's kind of like a career. If you want to be a clerk, you love the job and you just want to remain a clerk, that's fine. Nothing against clerks. We lead them, and it's good work. But if you want to be vice president at some point, the clerk thing has to go away, and it might be painful to take the next step, but that's the process.
Yeah. That's so on target. That is so exactly, precisely correct. When God takes something away from us, even if it's something really good, not just good, but really good, even if God takes a family member that we love dearly, even if God takes away anything that is so important, he will, if we trust in him, he will give us something greater. And there are so many examples that prove this. So many. In my own life and in the lives of people you see who either start out life or who have things taken away, and instead of succumbing to despair, there's just about always a period of grieving, a period of loss, a period of confusion, but afterwards just staying with God, and he will give you something greater all the time, because God cannot be outdone in generosity. And the things he wants to take away from you, or the things he does take away from you, is because a person, is attached to whatever it is more than to the will of God. Let's say a person has a wonderful apostolate of serving God's people in the church, and it's wonderful and it's great, and God takes it all away from this person. in any sort of manner, and it can be in a horrible manner, like betrayal from the people who are closest to him, religious Catholic people who he never expected to be betrayed from. And it's taken away in a horrible way, in a devastating way. And yet, God can bring greater good out of this as long as the person who has experienced this terrible, profound trial does not despair and clings to God. Something even greater will come from it.
Yeah, and you brought something to mind, and you can probably talk on this better than me. Weren't some of the saints of that mindset that they were getting too close to another saintly person, and they chose to remove themselves from that person's life because they knew that despite the fact that it was a hard thing to do, because again, this was not a physical or attraction, it was a spiritual attraction, but they thought that this person was maybe relying on them too much, holding them in too high esteem, and so they made a change that the person was upset with initially, but understood it in time. Didn't that happen with some of the more famous saints? Have you read about that?
I think that's probably happened to just about every saint. I really do. I think that's something that happens in everybody's life. The thing is, without God, when we step back from people, I think that it often happens in wrongful ways, in ways that are harmful, in ways that are painful in a way that doesn't help. I think that without God, people can be getting too close, or there could be friction at work or in the family or wherever, or even in the church. And when people aren't close to God, I think their emotions get a hold of them. And instead of saying to the person, or either saying or acting in action, distancing oneself from a person, they'll distance themselves from a person in a wrongful way, like by saying mean things or unkind things, or even things that are just angry things that they don't even mean. So, I mean, you know that this happens in relationships and families and stuff. There's too much going on, and they need to distance themselves, and they do so because they can't figure out another way, or maybe it's too painful for them. For a variety of reasons, they do so in a way that's painful, and oftentimes they amputate. They don't distance so that there's still an open door where this person can come back to them, or they can go back to the person. They amputate because you probably have seen or heard a lot of things, the toxic relationship, the toxic people. Well, the toxic people, I believe you do have to often, if not nearly always, distance yourself from them. But to amputate is not what God does. God distances himself from us, and God allows us to distance ourselves from him. But God never amputates. He never closes the door while we're still alive. He never closes the door on us until our death, when we say definitively, I do not want you. And then God will say, okay, go get what you want.
Yeah, yeah. Go get what you want, and that would be hell. A
life without me, an eternity without me.
Yeah, well, that's my understanding is you get a choice, and one response was never an eternity of misery versus over 1 minute on bended knee. In other words, I don't serve anyone. I will spend a life in misery. Did you ever hear that phrase? I don't know who said it, or if it was just a...
Can you say it again? It's about... repeat it again, please?
It was given a choice. Someone says, no, I will not serve on bended knee, not for 1 minute. I will spend eternity in misery over 1 minute on bended knee.
Whoa!
Oh, yeah. That may be a good start to the next week's show, because we get a choice, and I think there's a lot there to discuss. So if we want to reserve that a little bit, we can certainly bring it on in more detail on another show. Oh yeah, that's when I read that really caught me the same way it just seemed to catch you.
Wow. Well, we are done with time for this week, and but anyway, it was great talking to you, and it's always wonderful to speak on all these wonderful topics. And so have a great week, and to everybody, God bless, and we'll say our prayer.
Okay, very good. So, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Amen. Good talking to you, Maria. Always great, always interesting.
It is indeed. All right, you have a great week, and everybody else who's listening, have a wonderful, blessed week. God bless everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye now.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.